Welcome to Talking Giants player profiles and projections brought to you by Captain Morgan. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. And today we are looking at Penn State's Theo Johnson, the Giants' fourth round pick in the 2024 NFL Draft. 6'6", 259 pounds, 33-inch arms. Is that cookie cutter or what? But wait, there's more. He ran a 4.57 40, a 39.5-inch vertical jump, a 7.15 shuttle. 23 years old. I mean, this guy is like, create a player athleticism and size for a tight end, Justin. And I'm excited to have him on the team. He was my tight end 2 in this class, a weak tight end class, but still was my tight end 2 in this class. And for me personally, the highest I've been on a day 3 pick that the Giants have drafted.
Well, I was just going to ask you, between your own evaluation and your own rankings, between draft Twitter, this guy Theo Johnson was a Senior Bowl guy, and then also between Hard Knocks of, the guy got a whole part of a segment in like multiple episodes, Theo Johnson did, of Hard Knocks. Has there ever been more of a not even hyped up day 3 pick that the Giants have had since like we've been covering this team, Bobby? But also, like, I feel like this is correctly and justifiably, like, the hype around Theo Johnson it's not overbearing, or is it starting to get too overbearing?
No, I don't think it has. Like the only guy who I'm thinking who I might have been like similarly, like, was probably maybe Julian Love, but even then that was our first year doing it and using like YouTube, cut ups to watch these guys and watching on my phone. Like he had like I think one of like the 17th best like RAS score for tight ends all time. Now we don't believe in RAS scores. It overhypes size. Like if a guy like wins all the the testing stuff, I think he should be a little higher. Anyways, he is someone who does stretch the field, but can legitimately run routes and separate. Right? Like I thought his film breakdown was this was a boring tight end class to watch, honestly, outside of Brock Bowers. And I was going through tight ends, and then I got to Theo Johnson. I was like, okay, this is a guy I can get excited for. And hey, there's things he has to get better at. Like there's times where it is predictable in his route where he's going. There is times where he pushes off too much, and he can border on the line of offensive pass interference. But he knows how to win leverage. He has the athleticism, and he has the size. I feel like this is a great guy to mold at that tight end spot.
And I feel like he's an all-around player, too, where you can put his hand in the dirt and you're not going to feel like you have a disadvantage as a blocker, which that has been the one thing that we have asked for years is, what's more imperative for a tight end, just as much as their receiving ability, is to not be a liability when you're out there, when the team either chooses to put you out there in pass protection, which Theo Johnson has some legit pass protection reps, and then also as an inline blocker as well. Theo seems to be a well-rounded, versatile tight end that's kind of got it all. And I think the fact that he is a plus receiver and he knows how to get that sneaky little separation with that high-end athleticism, it's a much added bonus to a player that we're very excited about.
Absolutely. And I just want to read off some of the bullet points I have from my draft write-up on him. Is cookie cutter tight end who can do it all. Speed is very good for his size. Acceleration is above average and smooth. Really good nuanced route runner. Sets up DB at stem with tempo and footwork. Good acceleration out of cuts. Crisp and quick cuts into breaks. Smooth transitions at full speed. Physical at the stem with push-offs. Works release as well. Can grow finding the hole and zone and settling. Good catch radius with good hands, solid and contested catch spots. Hard to bring down in the yak game. Great posture and technique as a blocker. Keeps feet moving through blocks as a move blocker. Has some mental mistakes as a blocker. Needs some more ass kicker in line and especially on the move as a blocker. So, and the negatives are, that part I had about blocking is just that there is times where his routes are telegraphed, right? You see, he needs to be more consistent because you see flashes of just really fucking good route running where it's like you set that up really well. Now, here's the thing. He didn't produce a lot at Penn State, right? So we can talk about his things at the NFL. He only had 340 yards last year, 7 touchdowns, 328 yards the year before with 4 touchdowns. So he's been able to get the touchdown numbers well. I think there's a couple things. One, Penn State's offense is just frustrating to watch.
I hate watching any prospect from Penn State, offensively or defensively.
Yeah, I thought Drew Aller was really bad last year. Missed him a lot. Like there was a lot of yards for Theo Johnson left on the field by Drew Aller, and also they did split time. He did split some time with another tight end they had on the roster. I don't know who he is or what his future draft prospects are, but they did split time with him as another tight end. Justin, have gotten to see a little bit of him in preseason, and one of my biggest worries for any rookie tight end is how good are you as a blocker year one, right? Even guys that we love, like, Payne Durham, who was like, I want to draft you for the blocking. It's just a different level in the NFL. We haven't seen the same film that he did have at Penn State. Is he your tight end one going into the season, though?
He's still my tight end one heading into the season. I've said it all summer. I'm going to say it again. I mean, we saw the snap share when Daniel Jones was out there during the preseason game. He still led all tight ends in snaps, and even Daniel Bellinger, like weren't all of his snaps simply coming from the backfield?
Not all of them, but a lot of them were.
So I still think, even though Theo Johnson hasn't had the cleanest camp and the cleanest preseason, I still think he is going to be tight end one. He is going to lead this team in tight end snaps. He may not dominate it, per se, but I think he is going to, even from the start of the season, but definitely by season's end, be leading the team overall in tight end snaps. And I think he should, because of what he offers as a receiver. And as long as he's not a disaster as a blocker, I think he should be out there.
I agree. Now, here's the thing. What do you expect production-wise for him? Because I feel like we're going to have a couple games where we get like 70 yards, maybe a touchdown thrown in here or there. But I do think that there's going to be times where he's just not really a big part of the game plan, and there's going to be games where there's one catch for 9 yards.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So I think that's. But here's the thing: it's like kind of like that. Obviously, I would like for him to be just fucking good every week. But the way this team's built up, I don't want to put too much on him as a rookie, because he does need to grow, and tight end is a spot that takes some time. Because I was so high on him, Justin, you made me give him like a player comp, and I landed like in a realistic one, right? Not like, or like a realistic ceiling guy, not just like, guys fucking can be Travis Kelce, mix of Gronk and Tony Gonzalez. I landed on Cole Kmet, who, first year in the league, 240 yards. Next 2 years, 612 and 544, and then last year was his best year, where he had 73 catches, 719 yards, and that was with bad quarterback play. Ooh, they force-fed DJ Moore, and Justin Fields threw for 300 yards, I think, once their entire time together. I think that's my realistic expectation for Theo Johnson, is what Cole Kmet has been in the NFL. He's obviously has the ability to go higher than that, but that's my realistic expectation.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be the number 5 option in this offense, right? Because you have the 4 receivers that are going to lead the way, right? As options, I think, in priority. And then maybe you can argue, like, whoever
he'll be the number 4 option on the field at basically every given time, unless they're in 2 tight end sets.
Right. If you're in 11 personnel, Theo Johnson is most likely kind of like the 4th option. But I don't view that as a bad thing. I view that as the Giants' offense actually having answers and actually having options to go to this year, which is very much a good thing. Bobby, the one area that I'm like, we'll see. I understand he has the combine numbers. You even mentioned the RAS score, which we don't fully believe in, and this is why I don't fully believe it. I think Theo flashed at times with the ball in his hands at Penn State in terms of after the catch. But is Theo Johnson just simply a fast thumper? What are you going to give me with the ball in your hands after the catch? That is a big question that I have for him at the NFL level, because he wasn't that great at Penn State despite an average depth of target being somewhat relatively low. I think it was 8 yards. And he didn't flash as much as I would want him to with a low average depth of target and with his athletic profile and his background. So that, I think, if he can be a plus player with the ball in his hands after the catch, Then we're talking about Theo Johnson going from like okay, mid, whatever tight end to a good tight end. But if we're talking about, are you just a fast thumper and you're not going to be able to break a tackle, get yards after contact, then that kind of, I think that does limit Theo Johnson's ceiling.
Right. I just want you to talk to us about something.
Oh, you have no reaction to that. That's the first time that we ever talked about that in the months that we've been talking about Theo Johnson.
I mean, I don't think he's like this yak tight end. I just no. Do I expect him to see him just make guys miss? No. But I expect when he gets the ball in space, I expect him to be able to gallop, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
Right? I agree with you, but I think there's a difference between like I think fast thumper is a good yak option, the tight end, if he's giving you all those other things.
Okay. Fair.
Right.
Yeah,
obviously we're talking about like what do our expectations are of him. So yeah, does that limit him from being the best, a top 3 tight end in the NFL? Yeah. But I don't think it limits him from being a really good tight end.
Yeah, I just think that's been an underrated talking point that I wanted to introduce because we've talked about the combine numbers. Look at how fast he is. Look at how athletic he is. Well, you want to
talk
talk
about as athletic as the RAS score says. Like the RAS score, it severely overemphasizes height.
Right. So I wanted to bring that yards after the catch element in there, and I spiced up that talking point. And you want to know how you can spice up your game day routine or even spice up your week a little bit? It's by getting some Captain Morgan. That's right. This PPP is brought to you by Captain Morgan. Did you know that they're the official Spice Rum sponsor provider of the NFL? They work with the New York Football Giants too. Saw them at some training camp practices, sponsoring some stuff, and I'm like, you know what? We work with them too. Giants. When it gets bland, try Captain Morgan Original Spice Rum. You know that they're delicious. You know that they're crisp. You know that it's perfect for game day with friends. And you know that you gotta spice it up sometimes. Visit CaptainMorgan.com to find Captain near you. I can feel that glass bottle just going up and around my head as we speak, even though Bobby Skinner is many miles away from me. Please drink responsibly. Captain Morgan Original Spiced Rum, 35% alcohol by volume. Captain Morgan Rum Company in New York, New York. Bobby Skinner, you'll be glad you did.
You'll be glad you did. I just threw it. All right, Justin, let's talk about Micah McFadden, 6'2", 232 pounds, 24 years old. And I want to say, I think the most least listened to player profile projection last year included Micah McFadden. It also included Mark Lewinsky. But people did not see the vision with Micah McFadden last year. Where I was like, he's linebacker too, right? People said, no, Darian Beavers linebacker too. And then they traded it for Isaiah Simmons. Like, okay, good. Now we don't have to have Micah McFadden at linebacker too. Well, you were wrong. The 5th round pick in the 2022 NFL draft, he played really well in his role next to Bobby Okereke last year. Now, a new challenge awaits him, but I want to ask you, start with this. Is he the best day 3 pick by Joe Schoen so far?
Yes.
The only person I think you can really argue is Bellinger.
No, but I mean, you have Micah McFadden who had a 100 tackle season, 12 tackles for loss.
Exactly. He gives you way more production than Bellinger has given you.
Yeah.
And there are limits to his game, but there's limits to Bellinger's game too. But let's talk about him. Like you said, 101 tackles, 12 tackles for a loss, 1 sack, 1 interception, 4 fumble recoveries. I know tackles aren't the end-all be-all stat, but he did miss a game last year. And I think over 100 tackles on a team where Bobby Okereke had 149, Xavier McKinney had, more than 100 as well. I do think that is pretty significant for him, right? And his 12 tackles for a loss was most for the Giants since Leonard Williams in 2020. And they were most for an inside linebacker for the Giants since Matthias Kiwanuka in 2011. But he played a third of the snaps on the edge, right? Like we think about how good Bobby Okereke's season was last year. Micah McFadden at the same linebacker position had more tackles for a loss for him. And what he does well is he gets downhill with his quickness, his lateral movement. And he was 5th in tackles for a loss for all inside linebackers last year. He uses his hands well to deconstruct and just get downhill. And he's good at follow the leader, right? And that was my big talking point on McFadden last year. Is like, I don't think he's going to be this world beater or anything, but I think he's going to look a lot better next to Bobby Okereke. He is someone who should be playing inside linebacker too, not leading the way, and he looked significantly better in that role.
And he did. I mean, Bobby Okereke and him had the same average depth of tackle last year. I've read this stat a lot of times, but it's one of my favorite stats from last year. Bobby Okereke and Micah Mcfadden were the only two linebackers to have over 100 tackles, at least 10 tackles for loss, and be on the same team. Statistically, they were one of the best linebacker duos in the NFL last year. I think there are plenty of other linebacker duos that are just better on paper and talent-wise, but in terms of producing those negative plays, which is so important, it's so important for a defense to do that in general. The fact that they were able to do that together and Micah Mcfadden was able to be that provider for it last year, for the Giants last year, was huge. And I love watching the way that he plays, man. He last year, like what we saw at Indiana, where it's like this dude plays with his hair on fire. He fucking plays like a madman. He's out there.
He played with confidence last year.
He's out there to go, hit someone. I think it's easier to see it. It's easier to do that in college and maybe have some of those big hits. And he's a little bit of a smaller guy in the NFL in the NFL now. But he played with that confidence last year, like you said. He played with his hair on fire, and it's fun to see just how fast and quick he can move and how quick he can get to a ball carrier when everything is going right.
Oh, and he's a player who needs to play with confidence. He lost his confidence as a rookie. Like, what was his best game as a rookie?
It was whenever Jamin Davis was next to him at the end of the year.
Jared Davis. Well, he did play well in that Eagles game, but his best game was the Seahawks game, which was his first full start of the season when they benched Tay Crowder in that game and put Jalen Smith as that was like his first game fully starting, and that was his best game. Then the confidence went after a while following Jalen Smith, and Jalen Smith was just arguably the worst linebacker in the NFL that year. So yeah, he is a good kind of follow the leader. Now this is going to be a little bit of a different. This is where, and we'll talk about some other parts of his game. This is where I worry a little bit about Micah McFadden this year in this new defense, is that it's more of just one gap and go, where Wink Martindale's was kind of, all right, if they pull this way, you're first, you're second, you're third, and a lot of times McFadden was the third guy on that, right? And it allowed him to have those tackles for a loss because one guy's taking the outside shoulder, the other guy's taking the inside shoulder, and McFadden would be there to clean it up. This is going to be a lot of more of taking on blocks, playing a little more patient, and not just go downhill, which is the best style for Micah McFadden. That's my worry, is that we're going to see a little more of the deficiencies with size, taking on blocks and stuff, without the advantage of all the tackles for loss and getting downhill. But hopefully Bowen uses him in that way, because that's the way he should be used. Yeah,
that's also like my rebuttal. It's finally thought of like that rebuttal to you now that you've been saying this for most of the offseason. Okay, well, Shane Bowen, let's use your players in an area where you think that they can be strengths for you.
Sure, but then you're letting Brian Burns and you're not letting Brian Burns and Kayvon rush the way you want them to rush.
Yeah. Inevitably, Micah McFadden's biggest strength taking on blockers is not his ability to stack and shed. It is his ability to go full speed, play like a bat out of hell, and take them on. Like, just take them on and either
rip through a shoulder,
go through them, or kind of go around them by avoiding them to begin with. But like you said, with the shoulder. So it is not the ability to stack and shed. And I think if we're going to be getting to a point where Micah McFadden is shuffling his feet, going towards the ball carrier instead of running towards a ball carrier, running towards a blocker, taking on a blocker, or trying to just blow up a play that way, that's where we're going to get into a little bit of trouble.
Now, let's talk about some negatives and some hidden part of Micah McFadden. The negative is that he misses tackle. I mean, I thought he was going to get benched after the Cardinals game because of how many missed tackles he had in that game, right?
20% last year?
He had the fourth highest missed tackle rate for in the NFL for linebackers last year. And if you go with guys who had 600 snaps, which is 57 linebackers, so that's not a small group, he had the highest, right? So this is not small sample. I mean, this is, again, the guys who played the year at a linebacker, the full year essentially. He had the highest missed tackle rate for those guys. That's just, I think it's a lack of length and just a lack of just strength. Like he's strong enough for his size, but he's not stronger than what his size, if that makes sense. And he struggles there, and just I think the arm length screws him up there. But I do think that's something that can be get better at. He is 6'2". He's not Ivan Pace. 5'8". Like he can get better at that. So that's just something that is what it is, and I think coaches, that is a way to get out of graces with like a new coach, is if you're missing tackles and you're not the guy that they drafted in the 5th round to play this certain way under Wink Martindale. The other thing is he was very much hidden in his biggest weakness, which is coverage, right? He just doesn't have like the athleticism to move backwards or the length to get his hands on the ball, right? Like if you put him like, hey, this is your assignment, go. He does a solid job, but he just doesn't move backwards well enough. And especially when you have him playing so aggressively downhill, it just puts him in some bad spots. And they hit it. Wink Martindale totally hit it. In a passing league, Justin, this is a passing NFL league. He was in coverage only 37% of the time he was on the field. And that doesn't include the fact that they took him off the field, right?
He was on the field for 69% of the snaps that he was eligible to play for. On the field for 69% of them.
Yeah, we did an Isaiah Simmons, player PPP last week, and it was like he was only on the field on passing situations. So how did that happen? Because they took Micah Mcfadden out on 3rd downs and they put Isaiah Simmons in. I don't have a rate, but like for those 57 guys I mentioned who had the 600 snaps, he had the least amount of coverage snaps out of all those guys. I don't know what the percentage is on that. And I expect a similar role this year. I think with Isaiah Simmons back, I know everyone got hot and bothered about early down nickel, and we've kind of beat the drum of like that's just not a reality. And then you see him give up a touchdown in preseason, and you realize that Isaiah Simmons is your third down linebacker, and I think it's going to continue that way. But what it does, it's like, hey, that's awesome that you can hide that, but it just does limit the value of Micah Mcfadden when you come contract time. When it comes to can we upgrade at this position time, he is someone that you're taking off the field on 3rd down.
Right, but we're not there yet. We talked. This is how we started this PPP, saying, is this the best day 3 Joe Shane pick? And the answer is yes. Where as long as I have a day 3 guy that has a trump card and he does something well, and if he can continue to do it well, and if he can continue to produce these negative plays and play with your hair on fire in the run game, if we have the personnel and we have Isaiah Simmons here, or there's another money backer that we feel like we could put on the field during 3rd downs and a guy has to come off, I'm fine with that. That's kind of where in some fashions and in some elements, that's kind of where the NFL is going to, putting more secondary guys on the field and taking these linebackers off the field. So as long as Micah Mcfadden continues to be an advantage in one area of his game, I am totally fine with having to take him off the field to save face for him. Right? Right.
I also like him as a pass rusher too.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
He's got he was really good at Indiana. He's got the lateral quickness. I think he has that Seahawks game. He just bent the edge around Charles Cross and had a sack on him.
Mm-hmm.
So I like what he does as a pass rusher. So, even if you are in an obvious passing downs, like you can't spam it with a linebacker, and Shane Bowen's not going to spam it, but you can use that. And I think he is someone who can make an interior guy look silly with his lateral quickness. Justin, anything else on Micah Mcfadden?
That's it. I like Micah McFadden. I hope he probably won't have the same statistical year that he did last year, but I hope he does. Go out there and do it, Micah.
Absolutely. All right, we'll see you guys on the next one. Until then, let's go Big Blue.